This is a Maui lei. It's a very special kind of lei in Hawaii. And it's a fragrant leaf. It's a vine. And Kauai is very famous for it, but we also have it here on Big Island. And it's usually used for weddings or celebrations, things like that. It's a leftover from our 50th wedding anniversary weekend. Amaku aloha mahalo. E hopu mai kai. I ke hale. A me ke a poki manu. Mama. That's a formal greeting. And what I did was bless the place, wake up the spirits, and bless the people gathered here. We also have an informal greeting. And that's simply when we say love to each other. When we say aloha, that's a blessing of love. That's what the word means. We use it for hello and goodbye, but it means love. So when we say love, or someone says love to you, when they say aloha, and you reply back with aloha, you're exchanging a blessing of love. And that's how it goes in the island. So, aloha. Aloha. Maikai. That means good, right? Very good. We also like to begin with a blessing. And would you please? This is by some of our staff, Susan and Lois.
We were thinking of what kind of a blessing or chant to share with you all about today's topic. The topic is luck. And what we both, not talking to each other, came up with was a chant about choosing happiness, choosing to be happy. When you're in that happiness, what happens? So this is a chant. It's a chant on the surface to how much we love the sun, how much happiness that sun brings to us. But it's also a chant about waking up in a happy way rather than in a struggling way. It's a chant with many meanings. So think about the sun and how much we love it, but we can love any kind of weather. We can be happy in any situation. That's a choice. So, Makaka?
Aloha e kala e kaua e nei, ka huno no I ka maka o ka leua, ua I o lani pele, ua mali e, he na wei ki ke ana ka poki e aloha e ala e aloha e ala e aloha e ala e pele.
Mahalo. All right. Now, we'd like to begin with a story. So, the story we're going to tell today, we'll begin right now. Ikawa kahiko, mamua o kapena kuke. Once upon a time, long before Captain Cook, there was a hero, a magician, a demigod, a trickster, a shaman, and his name was Maui. Now Maui loved adventure, he loved new things, because he hadn't been everywhere and he didn't know everything. Now here's one version of one story about one adventure. After many travels and many learnings, Maui finally tried the adventure of marriage and married a very beautiful woman. Her name was Huna. They lived happily ever after eventually, but they lived happily, and even though they didn't have any children, they enjoyed each other's company, and they just had a wonderful time. And Hina didn't mind that Maui went off on all these adventures, because every time he came back, well, he'd share all the experience with her. And then she just got a big enjoyment out of that as well. One day, however, Maui was off traveling with some dolphins, just seeing where they were going, and because he could talk to animals, among other things. And while he was away, there was a high chief who came to the island that Maui was living on. And he came in a big canoe with lots of warriors. And he overcame all of the people that worked with Maui, and he kidnapped Hina and took her away because he had heard of her beauty. And this was a kind of a chief who just anything that was good, anything that was beautiful, anything that was valuable, he had to have. And his name was Pe'apea. Actually, his full name was Pe'apea Makawalu. Now it's curious, many of the storytellers who talk about this story, why they will tell give a literal translation of that. Now the literal translation is the eight-eyed bat. And because that's what that word can be, that phrase can be translated as, why they describe him as a bat, and sometimes they say he had 8 heads, and sometimes he had 8 eyes all the way around the head. Well, that's kind of interesting, but actually, the Hawaiians of old very rarely spoke in terms of literal meanings of things. They were a poetic people. They would always speak in metaphors and figurative language. And so when we look a little deeper into these words, Pe'apea can mean a bat. That's true, like I said. Pe'a itself can also mean a kite. It can mean a sail. But it can also mean someone who persecutes other people. That's kind of an interesting thing. Now the other one, Makawalu, literally 8-eyed. Maka is eye, Walu is 8 by themselves. And it could be that. But normally the use of this word means many. It means numerous. Okay? And another interesting meaning of it is somebody with chiefly power. Now we got something here. So Pe'apea Makawalu can also mean the powerful chief who persecutes other people. And what's very interesting is that's how he behaved. So probable that was the meaning behind this when they told him that name for this particular chief. Anyway, like I said, he had heard about her beauty, and so that's why he came and took her and kept her. Now he didn't take her because he wanted to ravish her or anything like that. He might have gotten around to that eventually. He wanted her because she was famous as a beautiful woman. So he just tied her up and put her in his treasure hut with all the other stuff that he had stolen from different people at different times. She was a trophy. So when Maui returned, oh man, now you can understand, Maui is this adventurer, Maui is this hero, Maui is this powerful person, but he's only a demigod, he's not a god. Which means that he wanted to go after Pe'apea immediately and get his wife back. However, he also knew the reputation of this guy, and what he knew that he had many, many warriors on his island. And so the only way that he could defeat the person was somehow to trick him, but he couldn't figure out a way to do that. So Maui went to his mother. It's very interesting. In so many of these stories, it's Maui's mother who really gives him the clues of how to do things. And what's also interesting is his mother's name was Hina. Okay? If you think that's strange, Maui had 5 brothers, and all of them they were called Maui, 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 and Maui. Okay? So he goes to his mother and he says, look, he says, what can I do? How can I get my wife back? He says, I can't face all those warriors by myself. And so she uses her clairvoyance, looks out through the ethers, sees the island, and returns to consciousness and says, you were right. It was a good thing you didn't go, because Pea expects you. And he's got warriors on the coast, and he's got warriors around his compound, and there's no way, even you with all your powers, there's no way you could have gotten through. So she says, you're going to have to go in disguise. Maui says, disguise? He says, like a bird? He says, I can do that. Maui could turn himself into a bird. He said, but then when I land on the island, I'll be a man and all the warriors will get me, so that's not going to work. She says, no, there's got to be something better than that. He said, I think your grandfather will be able to tell you what to do. And Maui said, my grandfather? My grandfather hates everybody. How can I talk to my grandfather? And she said, well, you're Maui. You're clever. You'll figure out a way. So Maui turns himself into a bird, flies to the island where his grandfather lives. But, he doesn't land directly. He lands in a bush, then he hides in the bush, and, he turns into a man, but he's hiding there. And he sees his grandfather come along, and, he looks like a mean old man. But Maui notices that he's all humped over, like there's something wrong with his back. So Maui thinks for a bit, and he picks up a stone from the ground, and when his grandfather has turned his back, he throws it really hard right at the base of his grandfather's spine. Pop! The spine just straightens right up. And the grandfather whirls around and he says, there's only one person who would dare do this and who could throw so accurately. My grandson Maui. Welcome, Maui. Come on out of those bushes. And so he was so happy because now he could straighten up and he could breathe right. And so it was the right thing that Maui did. So Maui came up and Maui gave his grandfather a honi. Now a honi, again here, a literal translation of a honi is a kiss, but that's not what it is. Very traditional, some Hawaiians still do it. It's where they press noses side by side and inhale each other's aroma. And in the old days, it was the aroma. Because it said, what I learned, was that the Hawaiians could tell from your smell whether you were a relative or not. And of course, the smell was very, very important to the ancient Hawaiians, and they probably developed it a lot better than we're used to now, unless you work for a perfume company. Okay? But anyway, that's what they did. It was a sign of respect, so they did a honi. And then the grandfather says, Maui, you don't have to say a word. I know what the problem is. I know what you need. I know what you have to do. Okay. So the grandfather took Maui up to a little hill where there was an ahu. Now, an ahu is kind of like a pile of rocks with a flat top, like an altar. But it was used for a lot of different things. So grandfather goes up there and he sits down, and Maui and grandfather sit there, and the grandfather begins a chant. See, because a lot of the old ways in Hawaii, here's another word today, there's translated as a word called pule, which is translated as a prayer. But it also means, it can mean a prayer, but it can also mean a spell. And that's how they did their magical spells as well. And so the grandfather, of course, knew many of these. So he sat there and he chanted a spell, and suddenly there's a whole pile of sticks made of wili wili wood. Wili wili is a tree that grows near the ocean that has, it's very lightweight, almost like balsa wood. And it's what they use on canoes. You know the outrigger? That's made of, usually, when it's done properly, it's made out of this wili wili wood. So there were these sticks made of wili wili wood. So the grandfather had Maui take them off and cut them all into a certain size with those days, they used a basalt adze, which is something like a small hatchet or a chisel. Okay. So Maui cutting this up. Grandfather chants again, and then there's all kinds of big pile of ie vines. Ie vines were used to make the strongest kind of cord and string in the old days. So Maui takes that off. And then he chants again, and there's a big pile of tapa cloth. And this was the bark cloth the Hawaiians made, mostly for clothing, but they used it for mats and lots of other things. So that was taken off. So now grandfather begins to teach Maui how to do something that no one else in the islands, until that moment, had ever done. Because he was teaching him how to make a pea. Although the most common name for that today is lupe. It's a kite. Okay. And they had kites. They flew kites all over Polynesia. But supposedly they flew the best ones up here, right here in Hawaii, the most biggest variety. And they would have kite games and all kinds of stuff. But they had different kinds. One was called a moon kite. And it was made in a way that was round. One of them was called a star kite. And it had 8 points on it, the way the thing was arranged. By the way, the cords the sticks were really wood, the cords were the ie vine, and the tapa cloth was used for the body of the kite itself. There was an odd-shaped kite, very difficult to describe, and it was called a leaping kite. And that's the kind that they would use for kite fights, which they used to have. And there was even one that was like a banner that was called a centipede kite. But the most common one, and this is not the one Maui used, the most common one was called a bird kite. And it was called that because from a Hawaiian point of view, from our point of view, it looked like a kite shape, like that, right? That was the most common kind. But Hawaiians saw those parts that came out like bird wings. And there's also a play on words in there with the meaning of bat as well. So anyway, finally, grandfather taught Maui how to make a very special kite, a very big kite. This one was called Lupi Huinaha, which means four-cornered. But it was a trapezoid. So it had a short top and then came out like this. And it had all kinds of sticks in it to make it very sturdy and strong. And they would make really big ones of those. You know how we have kite surfing today? This was, in ancient times, they had canoe surfing. They'd use these big kites when the wind was right to pull the canoes along. It'd save an awful lot of paddle work. Okay? And, you know, they didn't have to work so hard at having to sail, too. So this was a type of kite that was used for that. But sometimes they were big enough also to lift a man, and they could lift him. This one was big enough to lift a man like Maui. So he taught him how to do that. And he said, okay, he taught him how to build it, how to guide it in the air, and then grandfather said, the rest is up to you. So Maui takes the kite apart and he puts it in his, grandfather gives him a canoe and he takes it back to his island. And he goes there and he puts it all together again. He gets his people together and he says, all right. Oh, one more thing grandfather taught him that I'll tell you in a moment. But anyway, he puts it all together and he takes his crew out with the canoe and they wait until the winds are heading toward the island of Pe'apea. So then they get the canoe out there, and when they're well out to sea, Maui puts the kite together. He has his companions put him in the kite, and he does a chant that grandfather taught him so his whole body would look like tapa cloth. That was his disguise. So off he goes up into the air, way up. At the same time he's up in the air, he's helping to pull the canoe around along. So from the air, Maui can see when they reach near the island of Pe'apea. And so Maui signals down to his companions so that they release the kite before they can be seen from the shore. And he gives them other instructions too. But anyway, now Maui's gliding the kite. And as he gets closer to the island, well, first of all, the warriors and the other people on the shore are shouting, and look at that, wow, it's incredible. I've never seen one so big. And if he gets closer, and with a little magic and a lot of skill, he finds himself able to glide around the island. And it's getting toward the end of the day, and finally the chief comes out. He's got a compound right on the top of the hill there. The compound means, you know, a bunch of different houses that he uses for different things, including his treasure house. So he comes out, and he sees it. And he said, I want that kite. Okay? And Maui hears this. The chief looks around, and he says, if that kite lands on my sacred drum, it's mine. Of course, he would have said something else if it landed someplace else. But Maui hears this when he's dipping down. And so he makes sure that his kite stays up until the last minute. Now, I have to say something about that sacred drum. Most of the storytellers, you'll hear, they will say a sacred box. Well, Hawaiians didn't have boxes. The word for box is pahu. Pahu also means drum. They did have sacred drums that were used in temples, really, really big ones. So, it's probable that it was a drum. So anyway, Maui waits until the sun's almost set, and he lightly lands the kite on the drum. So the chief orders some of his servants to go and take that kite and put it in the treasure house, and he'll fly it in the morning. So Maui goes, of course, with the kite, but the servants, they didn't even question the fact that this kite seemed awfully heavy, right? Because they didn't dare question anything with pea. So off they go into the treasure hut, and night falls. And everyone's asleep, the middle of the night. Maui softly does the chant. He becomes visible as a man again. Now his wife is in the hut, and she can see him. But Huna is such a clever wife. And when she sees Maui suddenly appear, she doesn't scream, she doesn't holler, she doesn't do anything except smile really big. And so then they come over and he releases her. And then they takes the kite apart so that no one will know how to put it back together again. And then he takes his wife down to a part of the coast where he had already planned for his companions to land in the middle of the night. And they go away, and they went back, and they lived happily ever after, and no one ever tried to get Hina again. Now, pea, there's different stories about that. But the story I heard was that he slept all through the night. When he got up, and he went in, and he found that both, because Maui took the kite with him when he took it apart, both the kite and the beautiful woman that he had stolen were both gone. He was so shocked, he fell down dead. In any case, we do know he never bothered anybody again. Pipi holo keika'au. Let me try that one again. Pipi holo keika'au. So runs the story. So now we're talking about the topic. The topic of the day is the secret of luck. And I want to tell you some things about that and help you see it in some ways that you may not have thought of looking at it before. And of course, Maui had a lot of knowledge, he had a lot of skill, and he had a whole lot of luck. And some people think it wasn't lucky that his wife was stolen. Well, in a way it was, because he learned how to fly a kite. And he learned all kinds of other things that he did. So luck came out of that. And he was lucky his wife wasn't hurt, and he was able to rescue her safely. It was a lot of luck. But why do some people seem to have more luck than other people? And there's another question. If you don't have it, how can you get more? And another question. What is luck anyway? That'd be good to know. Well, I'm going to give you my ideas. Here's a very simple answer to the last question. What is luck? Luck is an experience that feels good. Whether you expect it or not. We think of a lot of the ways in which people talk. For instance, lucky we live Hawaii. There's, a lot of people will say that. Well, yes, but it wasn't chance. We chose it. And yet, yes, we're lucky. So it's any good experience, whether you expect it or not. We can call that luck. Now first, what a lot of people don't realize is that one way to have more luck is to get more knowledge. Now, I don't mean intellectual knowledge. Hawaiians have a very particular word for this kind of knowledge I'm talking about. It's called ike. And it means, to give you some idea of what I mean, the word for enlightenment is na'au, which means gut knowledge, where you know something in your gut. The word for wisdom in Hawaiian is ikepono, which means good knowledge, okay? Useful knowledge. So the more knowledge you have about how to do something, the more lucky you're going to find yourself being. More things will happen that are good for you because of the knowledge you have. And sometimes that knowledge is how to use information. Maui had the knowledge that his grandfather gave him, but Maui had to use that information to go rescue his wife. Remember, grandfather said, that's up to you. The other way, like I said, how to use information or how to do things with it, or like somebody said a long time ago, in fact, so long ago, you wouldn't believe it hardly, in the 1st century AD, there was a Roman philosopher called Seneca, and he said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And there's a beautiful example of this kind of luck. It's not the only kind. Now, a second way to increase luck, you might think of this as a backdoor way to increase luck. The second way to increase luck is to systematically reduce or eliminate all fears, unhappiness, doubt, and stress. To the degree that those are gone, all you got left is good stuff. And you're left with more and more of it, and more good stuff you have inside, the more good stuff happens to you. That's easy to see, that's easy to notice in the world. It's kind of like the idea, some people call it like attracts like. So the more good feelings you have, the more goodness you experience, the better you feel, the more good stuff happens to you. In a moment of fearless, it's a source of also something that people call dumb luck. Okay? When somebody doesn't seem prepared at all, but just something happens. Well, this explains it this way. In a moment of fearless, tolerant, doubtless, stressless thinking, okay, something good and totally unexpected happens. Okay? That moment may last, or it may not. Okay? The more it lasts, the more good stuff happens. But sometimes we just happen to be in that kind of a moment, and all that bad stuff just isn't there for a moment. Whew, good stuff happens, just like that. There's a third way. The third way is to focus on what you want and not on what you don't want. This is a little different than the previous one because this one's more active. The previous one, it just happens when you're in the right state. This one, you are purposely keeping your focus. It's well known, for instance, that people who win the lottery the most are the ones that buy the most tickets. You can look that up if you want to. That's what happens. Some of the others are dumb luck. They just happen to have that moment. Okay? But the ones that win it most times are the ones that buy the most tickets steadily. They keep their focus. The people who succeed most often are the ones who have a purpose and goals and plans, and who are flexible enough to change and adapt. Because it's not the plan that's important, it's the purpose of the plan. So that's another way to increase luck. When you do that, good stuff happens. The fourth way is very interesting. It's developing a habit of expecting good stuff. Now, some people grow up with this. And we look at them and we see their lives and it's just, nothing but good stuff keeps happening to them, even when they don't seem to be so good. So how can that happen? Well, you know, if that is your expectation in life, you don't have to worry about it. More stuff is going to happen because you expect it to happen. That's where your mindset is. That's where your feelings are. It's nice if you can grow up that way. Okay? I didn't. Okay? I'm very lucky, but not because of that. But the other way is to practice the habit of expecting good stuff. This isn't easy, because sometimes it really means changing an old habit of poor expectations or worry or that kind of stuff. It can be done, however. So I'm going to give you a little tool that'll help you, give you some ideas. Some people use affirmations for this of some kind as a means of getting into a habit of expecting good. But I want to give you something I call the ultimate affirmation. And here it is. Everything is working out perfectly because I am lucky. I always have been lucky. I always will be lucky. And every day, in every way, my luck keeps getting better. Now, I practice this every time something good happens. I'll run this through my mind as a reinforcement. But it takes a lot of that. But it is a way of increasing luck, having more of it. All right. A fifth way. This is an interesting way. This is a lot more fun way. Hard for some people. But this is to bless everything you like or want. This means to acknowledge, to appreciate, to compliment, to praise, to enjoy the good stuff around you. The good stuff that becomes available. The idea behind this is whatever you bless increases. In Hawaiian, the word for to bless is a couple words, they mean about the same thing. Ho'omaikai or ho'opomaikai. One carries a connotation of doing it silently. Ho'opomaikai. But the meaning of maikai in there, maikai is a word meaning good. Ho'omaikai simply means to do good or to make something good. But hidden in there is a secret. Because it also means to strengthen something. The word ika is in there, which means strong. Ika-i means great strength. Ma-ika-i, if you want to look at the roots that way, means a state of great strength. Ho'o means to make a state of great strength. Make it short and simple, to strengthen something. So if you want more prosperity, bless all the signs of prosperity that you see. It doesn't have to be yours. Oh, that guy got a new car. Wonderful. I bless his happiness with that new car. Because there's a part of you that's going to be hearing that and is going to be taking that personally. I bless the beauty of that flower. I bless how good, it feels to have the sunshine up in Volcano once in a while. You can bless. I bless all the telephone poles. I bless their slimness. I'm working on that one right now. And you bless the goodness, and it becomes a blessing in your life as well. Okay? If you keep doing that. All right. There's a sixth way. The sixth way is to purposely seek out ways to discover your limits, if there are any. There's a crazy philosophy in the world today that says you must be realistic and you must know your limits before you attempt something big. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. How are you going to know your limits until you know what your limits are? How are you going to know what they are until you try something big? You know? It doesn't make any sense. Well, be realistic. Realistic in that sense means think like the person who's saying that thinks. And that's not always good for you. So this way of really pushing yourself, really going full forward as far as you can. Maui was this kind of, that's where a lot of his luck came from as well. Not just the knowing and the knowledge that he got, but this constantly adventuring, constantly looking and discovering and trying things. There is an old chant. It's combination creation chant and genealogy chant called Kumulipo, and very well known in Hawaiian. And in there's some stories about Maui as part of the chant. And the chant calls them, the way it's translated, it calls them his strifes. Like he was striving for something, or like he had difficulties. The word used is strife in the translation. The word for that strife is kulia. And you can check this out in the dictionary if you'd like to, because the word kulia also means luck. So these were also not just the 7 strifes of Maui, the same meaning is the 7 lucks of Maui. And this is an indication that this is a way of being lucky by really going after and expanding and stretching yourself. And then finally, there's another Hawaiian word for luck. This word is pono. And it's used in a lot of ways, but part of it means good, essentially. It's the fundamental meaning. But it also means good fortune, well-being, a good result. It means, in that sense, if you're talking especially good fortune, it means luck, good luck. And this luck, kind of luck, relies on doing good. Not doing good for a reward, although if a reward is part of the doing good, but nothing wrong with that, really the benefit out of this comes from doing good because it's good to do. And that's a whole different kind of thing. Helping people because helping them is the right thing to do. Whatever kind of doing good that you're doing. Another way of saying it, and it's been said like this before, so, okay, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And a lot of people forget the second half of that. The first part says, the implication is do good unto others. That's fine, that's wonderful. But the kind of good you do for others is the kind of good you would like to have. That's where the real secret of that comes from. Very powerful thing to do. And so, if you want to be healed, heal. If you want to be prosperous, prosper others. If you want to be loved, love. Now that last one was also said by this Roman philosopher in the 1st century AD, Seneca. Okay? He said those exact words. But this kind of luck, remember now, I'm giving all 7 different ways to be lucky and to be more lucky. It's not like you have to do all of them or any particular one of them. But these are 7 ways that work. And this last one is along those lines, to increase good in your life. So that's the teaching. Do we have any comments? Do we have any questions on the subject? Yes?
I'm reminded of T.S. Eliot's wonderful quote that only those who are willing to risk going too far can ever know how far one can go.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that was right along with that last one. Yeah. Yes.
What is the maybe that's obvious, but I didn't quite get it. the part about purpose you seek out the ways to find your limits are, what is the main benefit of that?
The benefit of that is that as you push forward in life, let's say, striving for something, like it was said of Maui, things open up and opportunities happen. And it's not the kind of thing where you're preparing for it. They happen because you're going where opportunity is.
Something actually that just occurred to me is that also kind of, you had said to find your limits if you haven't. It's, you're never going to know just how far you can go until you allow yourself to be then to seek that. And then you see how few limits you may possess than we thought.
That's right. And like I said, as you keep moving and stretching and expanding, there's more of the world available to you and more opportunities for goodness and challenge. Yes.
What was that quote about boldness having genius in it? So that when you make a decision and you move in a direction, everything, how does that go? Do you remember the quote?
Not exactly, but it's somewhere along those lines. Something like this is paraphrasing. If you want something, go for it. Mm-hmm. Boldness has genius and magic in it. That's along the lines of what we just saw. Yes.
And also the simple quote, fortune favors the bold.
That's
What
right.
was that?
Fortune favors the bold.
The bold.
The bold.
Favors.
Fortune favors the bold. See, other people have noticed this before. Right? And there's even another one, Ralph Waldo Emerson said, do the thing and you shall have the power. So yeah, there's a whole philosophy out there of that.
So how do you know yourself when you're growing and expanding versus contracting or shrinking?
Growing and expanding feels good. Contracting and shrinking doesn't. That's real simple.
It seems like, everybody kind of be fun to, okay, go for it, do the big thing and everything. But I know so many people that opportunities arise for them, but they don't take them. They make themselves look free through being afraid.
Sure,
How
that's
do
right.
you help somebody, like, to be lucky? I mean, we all have these opportunities all the time, but how do you make sure that
second-
you recognize it and don't get afraid to take it?
Well, the second way we talked about, the second way of increasing luck, was to reduce those fears. And so there's lots of ways in the world. Dynamite, I'm recommending, is one of the best. But to reduce those fears and those stresses and those angers and things, as they are reduced, then if there's less fear and opportunity comes, the people are more likely to have the courage to take it. Right. So reducing those things that lead to reduce inhibition